Evergreen content is a very powerful format of content that's valid for a long time. When we talk about evergreen content at Ebner, we talk about content that might be live for 5 years, even longer. So this is content that you write once, you produce once, and then you use it for a very, very long time. The format could be text, it could also be an evergreen video, it could be an audio file or podcast, it could be an evergreen slideshow. It could be any kind of content that your audience wants on that platform that the audience is using. So evergreen in itself is not limited to one format. Rather, it's a collection of different formats. It's a strategy. We call it the evergreen strategy because it's a principle that you can apply to many formats. You and I should be using evergreen content to really create content that the audience wants, not today, but also tomorrow, or maybe in 3 months or in a year. You should be creating evergreen content to be the definite source, the single one most important source of content for that specific topic for your audience. Evergreen content helps you to be a trusted, a relevant, and an ever sought after source of content. That funny term, transaction editors, that I presented today, it's an invention by the Ebner Media Group. It's an entirely new role in Europe. We're the first company to actually have implemented transaction editors. A transaction editor is a formally known editor who's creating content that triggers transactions. So whenever a transaction editor, we call them TE, it's a short abbreviation of transaction editor, whenever a TE writes content, he knows exactly what kind of result he wants. When he writes content or produces a video or creates a slideshow, he knows exactly what kind of transaction is at the very end of his content cycle. So he creates content with a definite transaction at the very end of his structure. A transaction as part of the TE metrics system could be a lead, that is, you generate an address, or an email, it could be a download, it could be a sale or purchase, it could just be a reputational transaction, that is, someone sees your brand, but doesn't do anything then other than seeing your content. So you become a relevant and a well-reputed source. That's a reputational transaction. So with the Ebner Evergreen strategy, when we say strategy, we really mean 7 steps. These are 7 steps who follow one after the other. We never skip one because we saw that when we skip one step, the whole strategy just crumbles down and returns nothing, no leads, no results. So we say one step follows the other. These are 7 steps now in 2016. It might be 8 steps or 10 steps next year because things change. There are new formats, new platforms, new audiences, new social networks. So it might be more or less steps next year. But today it's 7 steps and we start at step 1. That's usually the persona step. In the persona step, we really try to understand our audience. We do interviews, we visit people at home, we go to their companies, we call them, we really analyze as deeply as possible what the audience is doing with the content. We not only do that just to see what they're doing, we also want to understand who we are not reaching with our content. And I can tell you one secret, we have a magazine at our company, I won't tell you the name, but this magazine only reached 1% of the potential audience in Germany. 99% of that potential audience they did not reach. Evergreens now help them to really broaden their reach. So this is why we start with step 1, persona, to really understand our audience and to really capture their essence and their world, to understand how they use content and why they need specific forms of content. When we did that, we move on to step 2. It's validating these results. We then look into search engines, we look into social media, we look into e-commerce, because Amazon really is the world's 4th largest search engine. People search for content on Amazon. They search for products. It's a very, very powerful tool that actually no publisher or no native advertising company is using. Amazon is a very large resource. So this is step 2. We validate what we have learned in step 1. So we validate all the topics that we have seen in step 2. We go into Google. We go into social media, we go into Amazon, we go into all the app stores, we go into forums, we go into offline formats, we validate all the topics. And this leads us to a so-called evergreen content keyword universe that sometimes is up to 7,000 keywords long. It's 7,000 potential topics for evergreens. This keyword universe will be turned into Uber topics. That is, we group relevant topics, familiar topics with each other, and sometimes we have a Uber topic group of about 300 topics that now form the base of our evergreen content plan. This leads us to step 3. Step 3 would be creating a schedule. Because you have all the Uber topics and you know what the personas are doing with your content, and you know all the keywords, you can now create a daily plan, a weekly plan, maybe a monthly or even a yearly plan. You can really structure your content. You have for the first time at your hands, on disposal, a plan for the next 365 days of content. You cannot do that with news. There is no news out there that you know that next year in October there will be such and such news. But with evergreens, you know that. You know today what people will be looking for next year in November, and you can create your plan. Once you've done that, you move on to step 4, that is you update your content, right? You publish it once, and now you update it every 90 days. So once every 3 months, we go into every evergreen that we publish, and we update it. It might be a video, it might be a photo, it might be a quote, it might be just an infographic or a list of things. We just update the evergreen to keep it relevant, to keep it fresh, to engage the audience with it. And then we move on to the next step, which would be step 5. It's the social media link schedule. Every 45 days approximately, we just share the link on social media. We grab the link from this evergreen and push it out on the social media platforms that the audience is using. The only reason why we're doing it is to make people aware of this content, so that they know, hey, this evergreen exists, and then they can help us create a more engaging and more active evergreen. Sometimes they would share it. When we share the link, they would reshare it, or maybe add comments, amplify the content. And as such, an evergreen suddenly becomes a very powerful collection of our own content and the reader's opinions. Now this is step 5. Step 6 now is a very, very critical step. It's very important. It's also very complex. We call it the minimum information unit step. A minimum information unit is essentially one element of the evergreen. An evergreen is not only a long text. For us, every evergreen is a collection of many, many minimum information units. That might be a paragraph, it might be a quote that you can share on social media, it might be a photo, it might be a video within your article. A video might also be the video itself, the audio of the video, the transcribed text of the video, a slideshow. And suddenly you have not only one long evergreen, you have a collection of maybe 10, 20 or 30 minimum information units. And you then create a touchpoint matrix that is the channels that you will use to amplify the minimum information units. The touchpoint matrix sometimes has dozens of channels and maybe 10 or 20 MIUs, minimum information units. And this is a very, very powerful resource to really maximize the reach of your evergreen. If you have done all these 6 steps, you've built your personas, you've done the keywords, you've done the updates, you've done the social media sharing, the minimum information step, then you can really move on to the conversion stage, which is the final 7th step. Now you have created the audience, now you know exactly what you're doing with your yearly plan, and now you can convert people. It might be a lead, as I said, it might be a sale, it might be reputational, it might be any kind of goal that your TE, your transaction editor, has defined in the very beginning of that process. Helpful content, we think, is the most underrated, undervalued and underused powerful source of content, not only for native and content marketing, also for publishers. People out there on Google, 50% of people don't really type in keywords, they type in questions. They want to know things. They type in all kinds of crazy and weird questions, but also great questions. And you can measure that. We use searchmetrics.com. It's a software company based in Berlin in California. Great guys. And they can help you discover all the questions that people type in Google. And suddenly when you do that, we've built hundreds of questions. And now we can use these questions to turn them into helpful content, because people tell us what they want to know, like what is native advertising? If you look up in Google, it's a very often used question. It's not only what is native advertising, how do I do it? What are best practices? How much does it cost? Why do I need it? All these questions are asked in Google. You can group them together to create the most helpful resource on evergreen content out there on the web. You can become the evergreen native helpful content resource. Evergreen content is something native advertising agencies should be doing, content marketers should be doing, evergreen content publishers should be doing it. Jesper Larsen should be doing it in Denmark as much as he can. He should be the #1 European evergreen content specialist for native and for publishers. He should be the man in Europe. Native is also great for companies. So all kinds of companies who engage with content or engage in content marketing or in native ads should create their own evergreen libraries, maybe helpful content, maybe not. But they all should be doing evergreen. Also bloggers and freelancers and maybe social media influencers should be doing evergreens.